Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, "You Never Answer Your Phone." Okay boss, I'll take it with me everywhere, and I mean everywhere. I work in occupational health as a policy advisor, contract manager. I love what I do, and for the most part it's a great environment. I work autonomously, get to pick my own hours, and I'm not micromanaged. Our general manager, whom I report to, lives interstate, and mostly leaves me alone to do my own thing, but he does call me from time to time, and recently every time he has called I've been busy, either on the phone, using the bathroom, getting lunch, etc., and he cracks it. It's the one downside. I think he believes phones should be answered within 3 rings, whereas I figure if it's important they'll leave a voicemail or send me an email and I'll get back to them. My contract has no phone answering KPIs, basically the company is happy as long as I produce results, which I do, but it's just something that annoys my boss when I don't answer. Now I have IBS. Boss knows and is supportive, etc., but here is where my malicious complainants comes in. Recently I've taken to bringing my phone with me everywhere, including when I'm on the toilet. By chance he called as I was mid-dealing with an IBS problem, so I answered the phone. "Hello boss, background toilet noises, our username 37419, what are you doing?" "Boss, I'm just on the toilet." Boss then asks why I answered, and I told him because he says I never answer the phone, so now I'll answer it even if I'm on the toilet. Boss then laughs, hangs up, and sends me a text telling me to never answer the phone whilst on the toilet again. I know he'll still get shitty if I don't answer in future, but my little MC made me laugh. The next one is titled, "Look Karen, I made a friend." A few years ago I was meeting 2 friends at the county fair. I was running late due to the traffic. The fair is a pretty big deal around here, so I told them to go ahead without me. When I finally got there I went to the ticket booth to buy a ride pass. For $10, you could get a wristband allowing you unlimited rides. This was a much better deal than getting single ride tickets which cost $1 each. Except this year, something was strange. Usually you could buy just one wristband no problem, but for some reason the only way to buy them this year was to get 2 at once. Now obviously my 2 friends had bought their wristbands together, so I didn't have a second person to buy one with. I went up to the ticket taker, who looked a lot like a stereotypical entitled person, the short blonde bob, the oversized sunglasses on top of her forehead, the rolls of fat hanging out of her red vest all of the fair workers were wearing. She looked at me and said in the most annoyed voice, "Can I help you?" Yes, I wanted to buy a ride pass, but I don't have a second person to buy it with. Could I just have one wristband? What are you telling me, you have no friends? Did you seriously come to the fair alone? I didn't come alone, it's just my friends already bought wristbands, that's it. You don't have a sibling, cousin, parent, anything? I find that hard to believe. Yeah, of course I do, they're just not here. And you only have 2 friends? Maybe if you had more it wouldn't be a problem. Now go off and make a friend, then you can come back and get a pass. Her attitude really annoyed me, just about as much as this ridiculous new rule. Like if they could sell you 2 passes, then what was the problem with selling one? I get most people don't go to the fair alone, but what if there was an odd amount of people? I really didn't want this annoying ticket taker to have her way, so I did just what she said and decided to make a friend. Standing behind me in the ticket line was a pregnant mum and her daughter, about 8 or 9. I was assuming the mum wasn't going to be riding any rides, and they seemed to be giving in and just getting single ride tickets. That's when I got an idea. I pulled the little girl aside and asked her if she would like to get a ride pass. She said yes, and I got back in line with them. "Did you make a friend yet?" asked the annoyed ticket taker. "I did actually. Me and my new friend here would like to buy a ride pass," I said, smirking. The ticket stuttered and tried talking back, but there was nothing she could do. The rules stated that the pass had to be bought by 2 people. It never said that they had to be together or even know each other. The mum and me each paid $10 and took our wristbands. The daughter thanked me and we parted ways. I went to go catch up with my friends and we spent the rest of the day at the fair. I went back to the fair the next day, but this time with my twin sisters, where I discovered a new rule: the passes only lasted one day and new ones had to be purchased every day of the fair. This was annoying, but there was nothing I could do. Of course there was the same angry overweight ticket taker that was there yesterday. My sisters bought their passes together and I decided to do the same thing I did the previous day, just to spite her. I turned to the person behind me and offered to buy our passes together since he was in a group of 3 people. He said yes and we went up to the ticket booth. "Me and my new friend here would like to buy a ride pass," I said while looking at her with a big grin. Even more annoyed than last time, she took each of our tens and gave us wristbands. Of course, she purposefully ripped mine while tearing apart the sheet of bracelets, but it was still so satisfying to beat her at her own game. The next year, the single-person ride passes were back because of complaints from people including me. Turns out the fair was just trying to make more money by forcing more people to buy the more expensive single-ride tickets. Their plan didn't work because I had found a simple loophole that was used by other people as well. They still had passes for 2 people at a discount, so for my benefit and theirs, I would always find a stranger and go to the booth where that annoying lady was. She would always be absolutely upset as I said, "Look, here's my new friend, we would like a ride pass." The next one is titled, How to Break a Dress Code. I broke the dress code at my last firm because of shoes. I got called to the carpet for wearing black Skechers to work, so I started coming in every day dressed to the nines. We're talking cufflinks, high-quality silk ties, gold face metal band watch, pocket squares, some of the finest bourbon wingtips you ever laid eyes on. I got tailored dress shirts and custom suits cut for duck's sake. It wasn't cheap. I did this every day, while making sure to casually point out that the very managers who complained about me were wearing keds in the office. This went on for a few months. The interns and staff started dressing like me. We started comparing notes on tie knots and pocket square folds. We got high and tight haircuts with straight razor shaves. We bought badger hair shaving brushes and eucalyptus shaving soap. The partners started getting embarrassed as we were dressing considerably nicer than they cared to. They had a big meeting and declared the entire dress code dead. Jeans, t-shirts, flip-flops. All fair game unless you had a client meeting. The next one is titled, Mum Said I Had to Get a Christmas Mask. My mum is a huge Christmas fan. She goes overboard every year. For obvious reasons, we all need masks this year. I had ordered one from a horror narrator I really like on YouTube. The mask had his logo on it, a skinwalker. As soon as Halloween was over, like 12:01 over, Mum started insisting I needed to get a Christmas-themed mask because the skinwalker one was too scary. After hearing this for a little while, I found that this particular narrator was selling his version of a Christmas mask. A Yeti that had somehow gotten tangled up on multicolored lights. This is when my malicious compliance comes into play. She had said to get a Christmas mask. So I ordered this one. It came in a few days later and I showed her. She tried to say it didn't count. After I explained that she told me to buy one and it could count because of the lights, my 3 siblings agreed with me. When it comes to small stuff like this, we tend to have disagreements. Mum gave up on the Christmas mask after that. The next one is titled, I've Got 8 Hours. Okay then. So this happened yesterday. I work at a small production plant as second shift maintenance. Our shift times are pretty standard, 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7, this is important. At about 11:30 am one of our machines has a catastrophic meltdown, blew out a seal on a huge ram press and sent hydraulic water everywhere. Now standard practice for us is that we start working on something and if we can't finish it, the next maintenance man picks up where we left off. I get in for my shift and I'm told I have to get it fixed. It's a 2-man job that takes about 4 hours and the first shift didn't even start it. Now, we need this product to go out for orders since we're a bit behind because of holidays, so getting it done is a bit of a priority, and I'm fuming because I got left all of the work to do by myself. Cue the malicious compliance. I'm told by my supervisor that the previous maintenance man said to get it done and that I didn't have an excuse to not have it done since I had 8 hours. This isn't the first time he's pulled something like this. To be clear, this press nearly destroyed itself when it blew out, broke 14 30mm bolts, like, it's screwed. So I started working on it, got the gland fixed, then took a break, got the broken bolts out, took a break, got the packing out, took a break. You see where this is going. I spent 7 hours and 40 minutes fixing this machine. We lost an entire shift of production on it because the first shift maintenance wanted to be a prick and tell me, well, you've got 8 hours to do it. So I took nearly the whole 8 hours and felt vindicated the entire time. The next one is titled, Won't Let Me Have an Ashtray in the Garden, Fine. So many years ago when I was around 16, 17 my parents allowed me to smoke in the garden but would not allow me to have an ashtray to put my cigarette butts in for whatever reason. The only reason I knew was that they did not want me to destroy the aesthetic of the garden, which was already a hole, and they were pretty anti-smoking too, so that was potentially another reason. Anyway, I asked them where they wanted me to put my cigarette butts and the only response I got was, "Put them wherever you like, we are not having an ashtray in the garden," which I believed to be absolutely comical. You literally don't want an ashtray in the garden, but you are happy to have butts strewn all over the place. Sure, that's fine, however I am not the kind of person to throw cigarettes on the floor. Now I have always had a creative flair and I thoroughly enjoy art, so I decided I was going to collected my cigarette butts in a little jar and hide that jar behind a bush, moving it at different times to lessen the chances of its discovery. I was still following the rules because technically a jar isn't an ashtray. They forgot about the ashtray situation and moved on with their lives until, after about 6 months of collecting cigarette butts, reading this in my head makes it sound so gross, I'm sorry, I had collected loads. My parents went on holiday for 2 weeks and when they came back I had constructed a no smoking sign and a "thank you for not smoking" underneath it all out of the cigarette butts I had collected. They came home to find that and my mum let out the loudest gasp I had ever heard and my dad chased me around the garden with a bit of wood, but that's okay, we laugh about it now. Anyway, rules should really be thoroughly thought out before they are set. The next one is titled, Make Me Grow Through Extra Security for Fun? Enjoy a pic of my medical condition. My coworker, an absolute hero, maliciously complied at security on one of our subcontractor jobs. The customer was a manufacturer for high-end electronic components. Security was tight as a small 4 inches by 6 inches box could contain $250,000 worth of microchips. Our team was installing equipment in their facility for 1 week. A security checkpoint had to be passed every trip in or out of the building. Mr. Security Guard, Chad maybe, decided my coworker, Steve probably, was more suspicious than the other 4 techs. So every trip in or out, not only was Steve made to dump the entire contents of his backpack out on the table and go through it, Chad required Steve to show him the last 5 pictures taken on his phone to prove he wasn't stealing secrets. This is all fine, except Chad lets everyone else through without any sort of inspection. Steve is trying to stay positive, but obviously this is eating away at him. Steve tries to be overly positive and also a bit snarky with comments like, "Thank you Paul blah, for keeping America safe," which busts up the rest of our crew. Then, Steve has the idea that will free him the rest of the week. Wednesday comes along, Steve is overly scrutinized on our way in as usual. As we head to security at lunch, Steve says he has to go to the bathroom. He comes back out a few minutes later, absolutely giddy. Chad blah, mall cop, stops us on our way out and asks Steve to see his camera roll. Steve gladly hands the phone over. Chad is greeted by some very peculiarly angled shots of Steve's butthole. What the duck? Chad throws the phone down on the table. "Oh, sorry. I thought I had hemorrhoids and wanted to see how bad it was. Is everything okay with my pictures? Is the facility safe?" Chad never checked Steve's materials again. Good on you, Steve. The last one is titled, Have to Make the Temp Hotter? According to protocol, you can't, trigger warning, I'm about to stereotype. Ready? Men tend to like colder temperatures than women. Are we good? Okay. It's a tale immemorial. One person in a work setting wants the thermostat at one temperature and someone else wants it at a different temperature. One person sets it and the other resets it. I work in a lab setting. Not a medical or microbiology lab, but an analytical lab all the same. We have a large open area with a bunch of sensitive equipment and offices around the edge of the building. When I started this job 5+ years ago, there was a changing of the guard. The older workforce was retiring and new people were coming on board. This meant a bunch of new hires in a fairly short period of time. The old crew that worked in the lab were a bunch of good ole boys. Not in a negative sense, but older gentlemen. We work in the southern US and we loved our AC aircon. We would occasionally have to go outside to do various tasks, and when coming back inside, it was nice to have a cool environment. We would also have to repair sensitive instruments and run samples, all while wearing personal protective equipment, gloves, goggles, lab coats, PPE, which would make a person quite warm. These instruments are so sensitive that temperature swings would cause issues. We had the temperature set at 72 F year-round. Not too cold, not too hot. Everyone was happy, including the instruments. After a couple of years, they all began retiring. We hire a new lady, and I hesitate to call her a Karen because she wasn't Karen-like except for one issue, so let's call her Mary. Mary came on to run the quality control aspect of our lab. In order to operate our lab, we have to be certified, and maintaining that certification was Mary's job. Think FDA, EPA, DOD, something along those lines. The guidelines are strict and not complying is a huge deal. As more people leave, we hire more people, a few of whom are Mary's former co-workers. All of whom are great workers, and all of whom are women, yay women in STEM. The lab now is 2 guys, 5 women. After a while, I noticed the thermostat starting to creep up and I would turn it back down. The thermostat is somewhat close to my office, so I unconsciously kept an eye on it. Remember how the instruments are sensitive? They sure as hell didn't like the temperature constantly being changed. This means a bunch more work for me to recalibrate them multiple times a week. So I bring this up at a meeting. So I noticed that the thermostat is being changed and it is starting to affect the instruments in a negative way. Can we not touch the thermostat? Mary, well, I am cold in my office, so I need it to be warmer so I'm not cold. Maybe put on a jacket? We can't have the temperature swinging throughout the day. Mary, well, it's not just me that is cold, some of the other women have told me they are cold as well. A couple of her friends back her up. Okay, well, maybe everyone wears a jacket? I'm not sure what to do, but we can't have the temperature changing. Mary, well, if it can't change, why don't we just set it higher and leave it there? Why don't we vote on what temperature to keep the lab? Well, crap. I didn't think this through and now I know what's going to happen. I didn't have a specific reason to keep it at 72 F 22 C, it's just what we always did. The only other person that likes it nice and cool is my boss. He doesn't care as much since his office has its own thermostat. So, outnumbered and defeated, the new temp is 77 F 25 C and everyone is told not to change it. Working in the lab becomes a bit miserable for me. I am trying to work and sweating quite a bit. If you are cold, you can always put on clothes. When I'm sweating while working, taking off clothes or PPE isn't an option. The ladies, in their offices, are nice and happy, but I am miserable. Goggles consistently fogging up, sweat stains on my work clothes, just sticky and sweaty all day. Not fun. At least I got a fan for my office. This goes on for a while. I know it's only 5 degrees, but I am a sweaty guy by nature and it made a big difference. Then one day, we are updating our certification. We all have to reread and sign off on the new certification and go over the procedure for noting non-compliance issues. I actually care about my job and actually read the entire document instead of just signing off that I did. It also meant I got to sit in my office in front of my fan for a couple of days. It's not as bad as a legal document, but it's a chore. Then, I read something in the document that perks my ears up. I go talk to Mary. Hey Mary, just had a quick question about the new certification and documenting non-compliance. Got a second? Mary, sure. We have to take any non-compliance very seriously. Do you need a form? I think so. So what happens if we note a non-compliance? Mary, well, our certification dictates that we have to file it and keep it on file for 5 years and perform a root cause analysis project to figure out why it happened and to prevent it from happening again. All of this needs to be documented and filed. We usually do this at the end of every month. Now I have done root cause analysis before and it takes a good bit of time and effort. Non-conformances are a big deal. A good lab might have 1 to 2 a year, a bad lab, maybe 10. Don't know, been fortunate to work in good labs. Cue malicious compliance. Every day I come in, fill out the non-conformance form and put it into the system. The non-conformance? The temperature is outside the specified range for the lab. You see, our certification covers a wide variety of laboratory types, and while we are not a microbiology lab, our certification does cover these labs and they need to be kept cold to prevent microbial growth. If you have ever wondered why hospitals seem to be cold all the time, this is why. The certification temp? 68 to 72 F, 20 to 22 C. At the end of the month review, there are 20 plus non-conformances. Our director is livid. A meeting with the director, my boss, Mary and me is called. Director, why in the world are you submitting the same non-conformance over and over each day? Me, well, I noticed a non-conformance and reported it via the proper channels. I came in each day and noticed the same one again. Was I not supposed to report it? Big no-no to say not to report it, director. Well no, you should report it, but why didn't you just fix it? It would take 10 seconds to change the thermostat. Me, well I would, but we took a vote and it was voted to stay at 77 F and was told I couldn't change it. Director, is this seriously all over the damn temperature in the lab? Me, yes sir. We used to keep the lab at 72 F, but we took a vote as the lab and decided on 77 F. I wasn't in favor of it, but was told this was now the new temperature. Boss starts to chuckle. Mary, well, those are just the recommended temps, we can set it to whatever we want as long as it doesn't change. Why don't we just remove these non-compliances and move on? Me, produce the certification document. Actually, if you read it, there isn't any leeway. It says the lab is required to stay between 68 to 72 F. Everyone reads the certification. Boss, he's got you there. Mary, better start those root cause analyses. Director, just fix it. The next day, I come in and maintenance is putting a lockbox around the thermostat. The heat kicks on if the temp drops below 68 F and the AC kicks on when it goes about 72 F. Thanks for listening.